This is how this works. How do I know somebody's in here? No. Oh, one person is viewing? Doesn't tell me who? This is so bizarre, talking to like a screen in front of potentially, well, one other person. So whomever you are, hello. Is there a way to tell? Oh, Alex, hello. You ever, what's the one commercial where the guy's like, do you know how to post videos to Facebook? Yeah, that's how I feel right now. So, Alex, you and I will have, hopefully a wonderful and fulfilling conversation. If at any point you got any questions, go ahead and shoot them, and we'll see what we can get to. So today's topic of conversation, I've got my little notes over here, so if I kind of pan off screen for a second, it's just because I'm checking things, is going to be about discomfort tolerance and kind of general mindset 101. Josh, hello, welcome. So I think in any good kind of talk or any sort of content, we have to establish intent. So what I really want to do is kind of steer everybody's attention to that WAG nutritional pyramid. At the very bottom of that pyramid, what do we see? We see this big base block, so to speak, of lifestyle, right? So we know that lifestyle is going to be a large contributing factor to our success, both nutritionally and obviously lifestyle contributes to life success. And that's in the knowledge base. So yes, please go read the entire knowledge base. It's going to be very important to your success. And one of the biggest things about lifestyle is going to be kind of the requisite mental skill set that we have a need to use to survive. Sorry about that. So just like you have physical skills, just like you have emotional skills, you have mental skills that are also important. Mental and emotional, same thing. So you have a skill to develop a muscle up. You have a skill to develop double unders. I'm going to argue that one of the more important skills that you can develop from a mental standpoint is going to be discomfort tolerance, right? And that's a very big kind of motif from precision nutrition that all of us WAG coaches take, but I'm kind of diverging right now. First, I want to kind of introduce myself so you get an idea of where I'm viewing this topic from, right? What lenses I'm viewing this through. First and foremost, I'm a chiropractor, so I'm a doctor of chiropractic. Call me Dr. Mike. I'm a semi-retired weightlifter. I say semi-retired only because you have to be good enough in order to kind of officially declare retirement over something. I'm just a current kind of recreational CrossFitter. I'll jump into a weightlifting meet here and there or a CrossFit competition. So I'm kind of your run-of-the-mill athlete that is a weekend warrior, likes to jump in and work out a couple times a week. I have a history of kind of addictive behaviors, right? And I'll get into a little bit of why I'm bringing that up in a second, but I chewed tobacco for 10 years. If Crosby's out there, he understands. I was a binge eater and a yo-yo dieter. So I was dealing with some kind of, I had some things going on, right? And it wasn't until I decided to try and obtain a few skills of, especially discomfort intolerance that I started to kind of turn my life around in that sense. And it wasn't like I was doing crazy hard stuff, but I knew that it wasn't who I was deep down. So I had to kind of do some of this legwork that I'm going to put you guys through. And it helped me both from a nutritional standpoint and just a general lifestyle standpoint. So to talk about mindset and especially and ultimately discomfort tolerance, the first thing I think that we have to talk about is how do you relate to the voice inside your head? All right, and that's a very kind of hippy-dippy motif, but it's very important, right? What is that voice inside your head? And for those of you that don't really understand what I'm talking about, it's kind of that voice of fear and dominance and doubt, right? That thing that kind of creeps in the back of your head that says, maybe you're not good enough, right? And why does that voice complicate things, especially as it pertains to nutrition, right? So first thing that I want to touch on is number one, that voice inside your head is not you. Right, that voice inside your head is kind of an evolutionary necessity, so to speak. It's the thing that tells you what to fear, and it's the thing that tells you how to dominate. And so you can imagine thousands of years ago that was a very important component of life, right? We have to be able to fear certain things, and we have to be able to dominate certain things in order to eventually propagate our gene pool and survive, right? It's an evolutionary necessity to have that voice in the back of your head, and right, and kind of Eastern spirituality will classify it as ego, right? Certain things will say, hey, it's that little devil on your shoulder, but I want to stay as kind of pragmatic as possible. But yeah, it's that voice that everybody knows, that everybody hears in their head saying, what the heck's going on, right? The problem is it's less useful now than it was thousands and thousands of years ago, right? There's no saber-toothed tigers hanging around the tree that you have to be concerned about, where that voice would say, maybe don't go beyond that tree, right? There's nobody invading Long Island, New York, where I'm from, right? There's nobody coming in an Abrams tank and cruising through all the white C-300s and the A4s that the Long Island people typically like to drive here, right? There's less need for that voice than there was thousands of years ago. So the things that voice ends up telling us, right? The things that voice ends up telling us to fear, or how to dominate, is we fear our bosses, right? We fear how our spouses think of us. We fear how our friends think of us. We fear all these kind of arbitrary things that aren't necessary to survival, right? We fear facing the facts about who we are as individuals, right? That's a very important one, right? We fear that we are generally inadequate, right? That was the biggest thing that I realized, is I feared that I wasn't good enough, right? We need to dominate over people, over the expectations that we see on Instagram. Hey, that person's got a six-pack. Hey, that person, looks like this person looks like that. I need to be better than them, right? And that's not really a survival necessity. And ultimately, what I'm trying to get to, because this is, may seem a little convoluted, is when things get too hard, that voice tells us to just give up. Right? It tells us this isn't worth it, that this will take long. It's too long to lose weight. This is impossible. Other people who've had success, they're more adequate than you. They're better than you. You're not as good as them. Right? And that's a very difficult thing to grasp with, because it's tough to make change when you're listening to that voice. Right? When that voice is gospel, when that voice is truth. Right? What we need to kind of reframe in our brains, and the happiness trap, if you have not read this, please read this. This will kind of go into more of what I'm talking about down the road. And bear with me, we'll get into the discomfort tolerance thing in a second here. But it's hard to make change, right? It's hard to make change when that voice is telling you no, when that voice is telling you that you're not good enough, right? The fish that stays in the reef, right, out of fear and a desire for safety, will not theoretically get to explore an entire ocean, right? I feel like somebody needs to make a movie about that with Nemo, maybe a clownfish. But yeah, so that voice is telling us to not do hard things. But why do we need to do hard things? Right? Why do we need to do things that stress us? Why do we need to do things that are uncomfortable? And there's a basic physiologic law that kind of explains that. Right? The general adaptation syndrome by Hans Selye is kind of a fundamental reason, or a fundamental thing that we can reflect kind of our discomfort tolerance against, right? A stress is necessary to induce a change, right? A physiologic change requires a stress, and a stress is meant to be uncomfortable. Anybody who's experienced stress knows about discomfort, right? Anybody who's done a 30 on, 30 off on an assault bike for 10 rounds, right? That is an aerobic stress that's ultimately used to build our VO2 max, right? To make us fitter. A set of 3x10 curls is a tissue tolerance test that ultimately builds our muscles, right? Being 200 calories hypocaloric is a metabolic stress that's ultimately going to create an adaptation that decreases our body weight, right? You need the stress. Time to watch and bring them on the camera. Hi, Crosby. Hello. What's up, my man? Appreciate you tuning in. Do I need to bring them on camera? How do I do that? Do I bring you on camera? I don't know. Somebody let me know. Oh, you're just kind of giving me hearts. Okay. So you need to be hypocaloric to create a tissue loss, right? And that hypocaloria has to be uncomfortable, right? If it's a stress, it is going to be uncomfortable. That's what you need. You have to embrace that discomfort, right? And chances are, of those three things that I mentioned, right, the curls, the assault bike, and the hypocaloric state, right, most people are very, very willing to experience that dark place for fitness and health, right? Or for fitness, right? You're ready to kind of do Fran and really, really get down to the nitty gritty. How come you're not willing to kind of get to that dark place from a nutrition standpoint? And I'm not saying go and be a monk or go on a hunger strike and starve somewhere. I'm saying the relatively light discomfort of being a little bit hungry sometimes. It's absolutely necessary, right? So I guess the next thing that we can talk about is how do we build this comfort tolerance, especially as it pertains to nutrition, right? I've talked about this voice in your head that kind of doesn't allow you to experience discomfort, or is the one that's telling you that you shouldn't experience discomfort. Now, I told you how experiencing the discomfort is actually necessary for most of your goals. Right now, how do we build this discomfort tolerance? Right, first of all, read the Happiness Track by Russ Harris. It'll change your life. 1,000%. Take the exercises that they give you in that very seriously, and your life will change. Guarantee it. So the first step to building this tolerance is understanding, right, that discomfort is necessary. Right, we just went through why it's necessary. Understand the intent of your discomfort, right? That you are willingly going through this discomfort to create a positive body composition change. Nobody should be forcing you into doing this. This is an absolute 100% choice, and understand that the fruits of this choice will end up paying off down the road, right? And the last thing is kind of understanding why you shy away from being uncomfortable with food, right? Why you shy away from hunger being something that you don't like to experience. Okay. The next thing that we can do is kind of be aware and be present in the now, right? It's really, really an important step to sit there and say, hey, I am uncomfortable. Know what you are experiencing right now. Some people aren't aware enough that they're uncomfortable, or there's discomfort, or there's hunger there. It's just, it kind of builds and builds and builds and builds and builds until a massive wave comes crashing down, right? Once you know, hey, I'm uncomfortable, understand, where do you feel that discomfort, right? Is it just a hunger pain, right? Or is if you're like me, are you experiencing an increased heart rate, some dry throat, that knot balled up in your abdomen, right? These are all kind of physical manifestations of things, right? The next thing we're going to do is what Russ Harris calls diffusion, right? We're going to understand that emotion is not us. That voice inside our head is not us, right? It is something that's telling us, it's giving us a signal out of fear, right? It's, hey, you're hungry. What's going to happen? Why are you hungry? You're not good enough for this, right? And remember that the thoughts that you're having aren't necessarily true. Right, if you imagine that the thoughts that you're having or the emotions you're having are like a documentary, right? You can go to Hawaii and experience it yourself in the flesh, or you can watch a documentary on it. And that documentary is always going to have a spin, whether it's save the wildlife or you need to come to Hawaii, right? There's always going to be a bias with which you are viewing that documentary yourself, okay? So in order to kind of diffuse the thoughts in our head, you can use a variety of techniques. Right, the first one you can do is sing the thoughts, which kind of takes away a little bit of the sting of it, right? Russ Harris says, hey, sing the Barney tune to the thoughts, right? I'm inadequate, right? Makes it a little bit funnier, it gives you a little bit more space in between it. Nobody comment on my singing voice, please. Right? Understand and tell yourself it's a story instead of an absolute fact, right? I am telling that story, or there's that story again about how I'm not good enough. Right, how I can't do it. Right, next thing you can do is imagine yourself watching it as a television program. Oh, there's that TV program, right? The one that comes after Scrubs, my favorite show. Yep, the one where you're inadequate and you can't quite do anything right, and there's no way you'll be able to have success. Right, it gives you a little bit of distance between that thought and yourself. The next thing we'll do, and this is arguably my most kind of important one, this is the one that understanding this and developing this gave me the greatest results, was expansion, right? Acceptance. Allow the sensations of discomfort to be there. Allow the emotions to be there, emotions to be there. Allow that voice to be there, right? It can say whatever it wants, but if I don't attach to it, it's going to have less effect, right? That hunger can be there, and it can be there at kind of a baseline level, and I can let it be there and almost find a way to kind of perversely enjoy it, like, hey, there's my hunger, but you know what that means? I'm making progress, right? Obviously, there's a physiologic point where you should go eat, and you've got to understand the difference between that physiologic hunger, hey, I need to, and hey, I don't need to. This is something that's trying to distract me from something else. And that's where, in my opinion, the macros come in, because it gives you a tangible target to hit where you don't have to interpret, hey, am I hungry or not? Right? It kind of takes the guesswork out of it until you can redevelop kind of natural ability to distinguish between this psychologic hunger and this physiologic hunger. Right? Make space for those emotions. Don't try to force them out. Let them be there. Let the discomfort be there. Enjoy it, right? Next time you get on an assault bike for 30 on, 30 off, 10 rounds, allow the discomfort to be there. And you'll see that you'll be able to perform better in that workout than you would without it, right? If you panic about how uncomfortable it's going to be, it's going to make things a lot more difficult. If you allow it to be there and make space for it, you're going to be cruising a lot harder and a lot higher, right? Same thing goes for nutrition. Allow it to be there, right? Something that I like to think about is when you were growing up and your mom made a fresh batch of cookies, or whomever made a fresh batch of cookies, right? They put them on the counter in the cookie jar, right? We'll get all American on you guys. I don't know if they've got cookie jars in Europe or Canada. Excuse my ignorance. But you have this fresh baked cookie jar, and your mom throws all the cookies in the cookie jar, and she says, don't touch it. Right? She's trying to control when you eat the cookies and when you don't. Right? But what's the first thing that happens when your mom turns around? Is you go and you sneak a hand in the cookie jar and you get yourself a nice homemade baked chocolate chip cookie. Right? Don't get too hungry on me now, because that's not the point of this. I'm not trying to steer you guys towards eating cookies. But that's sort of what I'm talking about from an emotional sense, is that if you're trying to control those things, the second you let your guard down, it's going to come. It's going to that emotion, that feeling, is that those thoughts are going to rear their ugly head, right? If you sit there and try to white knuckle everything, it's going to be a bad situation for you. It's going to be worse than if you just allow it to be there and you're aware of it, right? And over time, these thoughts, these discomforts, these emotions will have less of an influence on you if you let them come and go, right? If you think of, gosh, we can get into another kind of analogy here, but everybody's got that one friend that's got like 99% bad ideas, but he's still your friend. And if you kind of ignore him, he's going to keep pestering you. But if you kind of accept that he's there and just maybe not listen to him, he'll be a little bit less annoying. I don't know if that's kind of if that's a clear concept or not, but to me it is. It's like we all got that friend that has bad ideas, but he's still your friend. You still want him around, but you don't want to listen to his ideas. All right. The next thing you do after you've expanded and kind of accepted things is we're going to take action. All right, we're going to make sure our committed action is in accordance with our values, right? Our true self, our values, that not that voice in your head. All right. And the easy thing about talking to this group is that everybody's value, or most people in this group, share a common value. And that value is going to be the pursuit of better health and wellness. Right, if that's not one of your values, then we're in trouble here, because it's going to be really hard to make a concerted action to make very focused decisions as to where we want to go nutritionally. Right? If you're in here because somebody else told you, or you're in here because you're trying to obtain an unreasonable aesthetic, or if you're in here because that voice in your head, that ego, is telling you that you need to dominate people, or you need to be an Instagram model, right? We're going to run into some issues. It can be done, but we're going to run into some issues. And in most instances, right, that action is going to require more discomfort. Right? It's going to require going to bed hungry. It's going to require discomfort tolerance, rather. It's going to require going to bed hungry. It's going to say, hey, maybe I'm not going to have this piece of cake or this real ice cream, and I'm going to have Halo Top, right? Some people love Halo Top. Don't even get me started on that. But right, a less delicious, more nutritious food. Right? Sometimes the discomfort comes in the form of telling your significant other or your friends no. Right? That's very uncomfortable for a lot of people. right? Is to sit there and say, yeah, I'll go out, but I'm going to tell you no, and I'm going to stick to my guns. And a lot of people fall short there, including myself. Right? The discomfort's always going to be, can be coming up as, hey, we're going to drink less at a social event. Right? Somebody's going to be offering me a beer, and I'm going to say, no, I'm done for the night. I've had my 2 well-logged beers. Could be pedaling 200 calories on an assault bike. Right? Something that's more uncomfortable than, say, eating a bag of chips. Right? So that's kind of my actionable steps in terms of how we build our discomfort tolerance, right? How we build resilience to that voice in our head, how that voice in our head tries to prevent us from experiencing that discomfort, right? And if we can kind of obtain this mental skill, if you think of it as a video game and, you know, an RPG or something like that, where you've obtained this mental skill, you've gone and you've got it, you've leveled up, right? You will have a large portion of the largest portion of the WAG nutritional pyramid down, right? You will set a wonderful foundation in order to proceed to where now we can worry about caloric balance. Now we can worry about macronutrient balance, supplement, micronutrient balance, things like that. Okay? Embrace the discomfort, because without it, you won't succeed, guys, or gals, or whomever. So that sort of wraps things up. I tried to be as kind of precise as possible, but who knows if I actually accomplished that. So anybody have any questions? I'll wait a little bit. Happy Friday, by the way, guys, gals, everybody. Sorry. No, tap to invite a viewer to be in your broadcast. It keeps telling me that Crosby wants to be in my broadcast. Is that true? Do you want me to put you in, Crosby? No, he's gone now. All right, so that was like a 21-minute talk. Hopefully somebody got something out of it, and we're in good shape. So have a good weekend, guys. Embrace the discomfort. Enjoy it a little bit, and understand when and when you shouldn't listen to that voice in your head. Thanks, guys.